Hello, everyone. We're going to start our user group session today. I want to thank everyone on the line for joining. My name is Rulita, and I will be walking us through the intro. Okay, so agenda for today. As I said, I'm just going through the introductions and a bit of housekeeping. Then we're going to look into what's new in accounting and membership, and then followed by tips and tricks. And we're going to have a Q&A session for you. So I want to introduce everyone on the line today. We have Steve Sterzigny. He's the product manager for Jonas Encore. And we also have Corey Reed. He's the director of professional services. So both of them are the subject matter experts in Encore. So they'll be happy to answer any questions that you have throughout the webinar. And my name is Relita Theodora. I'm the digital education specialist here, and I focus on creating educational content for our products, including tutorial videos. So please feel free to reach out to us with any suggestions so we can provide the content that you need. Okay, so here is some information for our customer support. If you ever need assistance with your Encore software, we have their contact number and email address here. And we recommend you to check out our new support site at support.jonasclub.com. And if you haven't had access yet, you could request access on the site and our support team will assist you. And once you're logged in, you'll be taken to this dashboard. If you have any questions, you can use the search field to search for the knowledge base articles. You can also log a support case here and view the release notes. So to take advantage of the latest features, you'll need to ensure that your Jonas Encore software is updated. And for more information on how to do that, feel free to watch the how to schedule an update of Jonas Encore video that is linked on the slide. And we also just launched the What's New in Jonas Encore courses. So these courses are the replacement of the What's New webinars that we used to have. The content is accessible at any time. You can pick which modules that are relevant to you, and you can do it at your own pace. So we'll be updating the content every 2 quarters, and we'll announce it in our monthly newsletter, so feel free to check this out. And we also offer a variety of different bootcamps, so they go at different times. You can see the link at the bottom of the slide here for more information. If there's something that might be of interest to you, or if you need a refresher on any of those modules, we recommend you to check out these bootcamps. And along with that, we do have training. So whether your club is new to Jonas and you need a full implementation on your system, or maybe you've added some new modules, we have our implementation specialist who will implement and work with you and get you all set up and trained on those modules. We're also creating e-learning courses. It's still a work in progress, but we're aiming for it to be up next year. And it's a self-guided training that you could walk through and complete at your own time. So if you have any training inquiries for Encore, you could contact us at encoretraining@jonasclub.com. Okay, and the last one I want to talk about here is an example of what you're going to see throughout the What's New section today. Pretty much all of the slides will look like this. You can see what the title of the release feature is, followed by the release number and month. So this means that you have to be on this release number for your Encore to have access to the new feature. So besides that, it also shows where you could find the feature in the software, and we've also provided the description of the release itself. You can also find a screenshot to show you how the new feature looks like. And as mentioned before, if there is a tutorial video available, it will be linked with the video icon on the bottom left of the slide. So with that said, thank you so much again for coming. I'm going to pass it over to Steve that's going to start off with what's new in accounting and membership.
Thanks, Relita. Hi, everyone. My name is Steve. I am the product owner for Encore. I'm fairly new to the position. I've been in this position for about 4 months now. Some of you may have spoken with me in my support role prior to product owner. I have been with Jonas Software for about 19 years, working in various products such as Clubhouse Line, training and support for Clubhouse Line, as well as support for Encore. And again, recently I just moved into the product owner position. So today we're going to go through our enhancements that we've done for a few of our accounting and membership modules. And we're going to include some enhancements that we've completed at the end of 2023, as well as enhancements that we thought we'd note in this webinar through 2024. So a few of our security-related enhancements that we've completed, one of them being our user group restrictions. And this new enhancement that we did at the end of 2023 just allows clients to set up user group restrictions for user groups. And the idea here is to really isolate certain users from being able to modify the aspects of other users in various user groups. So we wanted to kind of isolate roles, let's say food and beverage roles, golf roles, to be only allowed access to other users of their similar groups. And so these new items that we've added, you can see here, can be altered within users within system administration. Another thing that we did earlier this year in 2024 is two-factor authentication. And what two-factor authentication brings is the ability for users to have to enter a code when logging into Encore. So previously, we could just enter a password. Clients now have the option to turn on two-factor authentication, which would email the users a particular code, and the system will ask them to enter in that code. So this is new, and clients can customize this so that, let's say the code is valid for a day or up to 30 days. So that's something that we've introduced this year. The next one for business intelligence that we've done is just a kind of a usability type of enhancement. We are now allowing users to minimize certain windows, one of them being in business intelligence, so that you can continue using the system while you have your business intelligence reports open. So it's just an example here. We have the minimize, maximize, close options. Minimize will allow you to kind of continue using various aspects of Encore while you have the BI tool open. Now let's move along to general ledger. So one thing we did last year that we want to highlight again, because it's a very important tool, is the ability to unpost journal entries. So if you haven't used this yet, this tool does exist within general ledger. It was part of our 2023 release cycle, but again, we wanted to highlight because it is an important tool. The ability to unpost a journal entry is by user. So not every user can unpost batches. You first have to provide that user the ability to unpost, and that's within the user setup, as highlighted on the right side of the screen. So once users have the ability to unpost, you can open up general ledger journal entries and then unpost the batch there to make any changes that are needed. And we've done unpost in various other areas, which we'll go through in a moment. Here we've introduced the ability to work with the budget tool and minimize and maximize that budget tool. So you can go back to, again, using Encore, similar to what we did with business intelligence, go back to using Encore in various aspects of Encore while having that budget screen open. So again, this is more of a usability enhancement that we did the tail end of 2023. Another big change that we did to general ledger this year, financial statements, is our Excel export option. So we've enhanced our financials and the export to Excel. Little example on the bottom right here. And what we've done is really just kind of stripped out a lot of the formatting that we had in Excel when we use the old export option that you see kind of in the center of the screen. When you generated your financials and you exported them, we had a PDF version and an Excel version, and that Excel version had a lot of merged cells. The formatting wasn't very centered. So what we did was we built a new Excel export option that you see on the left-hand side here, and it's similar, but we did strip out a lot of the merged cells and merged rows so that you can export those details and then work with them within a worksheet and apply formulas if you need to right within that worksheet. In addition to the Excel export option, we've also improved the generation time. So instead of having to generate your financial and then export it, you can go straight to Excel export. This will ask you for a path to store your Excel sheet, and then I'll generate that worksheet without having you view the financial first. Okay, and some additions we did to the Excel export option after the enhancement. We've added a print scaling option. So in Excel, if you were to print your financials, sometimes those financials span multiple sheets. Well, Excel has the scaling option to fit all columns in one sheet. And what this option here does in Encore is apply that setting for you already. So after you export your Excel sheet and you go ahead and print it, it's automatically going to shrink all the columns to one sheet so that your financial then fits in one view when you try to print it straight from Excel. And the second addition that we did to that Excel export option is the ability to export into XLS format. A lot of clients requested that we use the newer format of for Excel sheets. And so within our global settings, so system admin setups global settings, we have the option now to specify whether you want your financials exported in the XLS option or the newer Excel format XLSX. So you can just open up system admin setups global settings and alter this option here. And you'll notice that we also have a new option just above it, financial statement run type for optimized. So we are looking to actually improve our generation time for financials overall. And this is something that we want to introduce and implement to all of our clients soon. So look for some changes to our financial statement generation time overall, and an improvement when generating a single statement as well as a package. And lastly, one of the changes that we did actually this week in Encore 24.11.1 is our ability to email financials. So we had the report scheduler created, I believe it was just over a year ago, where we can email reports that are from point of sale, accounts receivable, system admin reports, and email those reports on a weekly, daily, monthly basis. We've actually just added the ability to email financial statements as well. So you can choose whether you want that financial in Excel format or a PDF format. And then the system will generate those financials and email the selected recipients, just like Report Scheduler does currently. And you can do this based on a daily schedule, weekly, monthly, and also select the period that you want to run the financials for. So this is something new that we released in 24.11.1, and that should go out to all clients within the next couple weeks. Okay, moving on to accounts payable. So one of the changes we did to invoice processing is the introduction of a use tax per account allocation. So one thing that we were receiving were requests to apply various use tax amounts on an invoice. Previously, it was a calculated use tax based on the entire invoice amount. This would force users to enter multiple invoices when one invoice had some use tax applied and a portion of it was not applying to use tax. So we have implemented a use tax column now on our invoices that would allow users to specify which GL allocation within that invoice applies to use tax. That's it. Additionally, we've included an option to import invoices with use tax. So if you are used to importing your invoices through AP, we now have one of our columns, one of the fields within the text or CSV format can import whether that invoice has use tax applied to it. Another big change that we did in 2024 for AP and vendors specifically is the ability to merge vendors. So this is something new that we did in July. and it's an option that you'll find within the bottom of an existing vendor. You'll see a button here that says Merge Vendors. And so what this will allow users to do is to take an existing vendor, select another vendor from your system that is a duplicate, and then it will go through a process of selecting information from either of the two vendors to merge into one. So this will go through all the aspects. It could be contacts, it could be different setups for that vendor, and then the users can select from which vendor that they want to keep that information and merge into one. So that's something that we did in July, and hopefully that that clients are using that feature. It's a good tool that we've received many requests for. Okay, so another unpost option that we've introduced in September is the ability to unpost an AP batch. So now when you go to invoice processing, you'll see a list of batches that have been posted, and users can now, if you have the ability to unpost batches, users can now double click on a posted batch that is in your system here, and then click the unpost option, and it allows users to modify that batch and then repost it as needed. So there are some restrictions as to which AP invoice batches can be opened and unposted. So any batch that contains an invoice that has been paid, any batch that contains an invoice that is associated with inventory receipts, an invoice that is posted in an inactive fiscal period, and a batch that has been processed as a quick payment batch. So there are a few restrictions to which batches you can unpost. Okay, moving on to accounts receivable. All right, so one enhancement that we did to AR statements is the ability to now create a responsive email letter to your members. So historically, our emails and our email designer did not fit on various size devices very easily. And as we were working on some of our confirmation forms for courts, events, dining, it was time for us to do the members statement. So that is something that we completed earlier this year in March. So now clubs can create a responsive looking email that'll fit on a phone, tablet, or web browser. And that is done in the same way that you would create your confirmation notice forms. So on our YouTube channel, we do have a video on how to create your responsive email designers. And so you can just create a member letter, and then within our accounts receivable setups, select which form you want to use for your emailed statements. So that is definitely an enhancement that a lot of people have been looking for, are the responsive emails for statements. Another enhancement that we did was more for Clubhouse Online statements. We now have the ability to show unposted point of sale transactions in Clubhouse Online. So something that we did in Encore from the start is to show transactions within accounts receivable that were not yet posted. So was it, let's say, a chit in your dining room that hasn't been posted through end of day, it would show up on a member's account. We receive requests to show that information to members on Clubhouse Online. In order to do so, you would have to turn this on. So if you go into System Administration, Setups, Integrations, and select your Clubhouse Online E3 integration record, click on the Clubhouse Online tab, and you'll have an option here to show unposted POS transactions on Clubhouse Online online statements. An example of what the member will see is on the bottom right here. You can see here that a transaction will show as pending. Okay, so this is similar to what you would see in account inquiry, but this provides that visibility to unposted transactions to the member. Another enhancement that we did earlier this year was the ability to generate a statement on the fly, another popular request from our client base. So now through account inquiry, whether you're in the account inquiry program or you're looking at a member's account and their inquiry, you will see a generate statement button. And what this will do when selected is bring up the member statement program and just select this one member to print. So select the period that you're looking for as well as the one member and allow you to generate a statement for print or for email. Within our cash receipt program, we have introduced the ability to filter out charges based on specific cutoff dates. So this enhancement will allow users to, let's say, set up a common date, let's say the last day of your billing cycle. And what that will do is when opening cash receipts and selecting a member to apply a payment, it will only show you the transactions based on that date. So this was something that was also a popular request of our client base. And again, this will allow you to filter out transactions. Let's say if you're paying off an account mid-month and you don't want to see any transactions from the current billing period, you can set up the defaults within AR settings under cash receipt defaults. And when you open up your cash receipt batch, it'll automatically select the cutoff date based on your AR settings. And this can be modified as well. So let's say you want to filter out transactions that are from 2 billing periods ago, you can change the date, but this will automatically select the last day of your billing period. In June, we also introduced some changes to our fee billing configuration program. This is on the members side. And we have just improved the visibility of some of the overrides within fee billing. So a common comment that we were receiving is the fact that some of the information is not very clear as to where the overrides are being pulled from, as well as what the override values are. So some changes that we made, one to the total value column as well as the discount column, is that if the membership type had a specific override on the total annual value or the discount amount, is that information now gets pulled into the member. So that's something that we were missing before, and now we're including it in the members fee billing setup. And we also wanted to implement some formatting and some better visibility around where the values are coming from. So we introduced highlighting on these cells to show where those values are being pulled from. So if they're membership overrides, then we've highlighted the cell in a yellow color, and if it's from the membership type, then we highlight that in red. We also introduced an option to clear the override. So if you want to remove an override record from a member's account, you could just quickly click the paintbrush option, and that'll remove that override from the member. In record charges, we've introduced the ability to, or opened up the ability to bill members in different receivables. So one big limitation that we had in Encore prior to this was that your record charge batch would have to be for a specific receivable, and then those billing items would have to be items that are applicable to that receivable. And one area that this was a big problem is moving values between receivables for a member. So if you had multiple receivables, trying to take credits from one receivable and moving them to another receivable for a member was difficult. It was a 2-batch process. So now we've opened that up where a record charge batch could be for multiple receivables, and you can include multiple billing items for various receivables. So in this example we have here, we are moving funds from one member's receivable to another one of their receivables. So you can do it all in one batch now, and you can post this correction or adjustment without needing to do a second batch. Another unpost improvement that we did was for auto-apply credit balances. So a common issue would be that a auto-apply batch would be paying off certain charges within a member account, and clubs didn't have an easy way of undoing that batch process. So we have now an option within auto-apply credits to unpost a batch where a previous batch has been posted. Again, this does require the user to have the permission to unpost batches within system administration. And just like AP invoices, you'll see a list of batches when you go to auto apply credit balances, and you just double click one to select it to be unposted. Now, one of our last enhancements in accounts receivable is for extra info fields. We've now introduced the ability to list the values within an extra info list field. So if you create an extra info field and you've provided options, list values, you can now sort them so that the combo box, when you select them in accounts receivable members, the combo box would have those results sorted and not by the sort values of when they were entered, but by the sort in the column to the right. So this is retroactive. You can go back and edit your list values for existing extra information fields and apply a sort to these existing values. Okay, and that's about it for our accounts receivable, AP, and GL improvements.
Thanks, Dave. If you want to pass it over to me, I can take over with tips and tricks.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I should be able to see my screen share now. I'm just going to get it set up. Perfect. All right, so everybody should be able to see my screen now. My name is Corey Reed. I'm the Director of Professional Services here at Jonas Club, and I'm going to take you through some useful tips and tricks on the accounting and membership side. So first one I want to highlight here is using column filters to filter your grids between active and inactive items. This is a very common question that I see from users all the time. So, pretty much every setup item we have in the system has the ability to deactivate it, right? Because we don't like to delete items typically because they have history tied to them. We want to keep them in the system, but users often want to hide those from their setups, old items that they're not using anymore. And the common question that I always see is, hey, I've deactivated this item, but I still see it. It doesn't really help me. It doesn't, clean up my screen. It doesn't, make it more efficient. So, the trick I want to show you guys here is how you can actually filter your grids and setup screens to only show your active items or vice versa. This works with things like vendor, sales items, chart of accounts, really anywhere that you have a grid in the system. So I just want to flip over to my Jonas system real quick here and show that to you guys. So the screen up I have here on my screen is the vendor screen. So a very common one for accounting users to use. And you can see on my screen here that I have, multiple vendors. Some of them are active, some of them are inactive. So if you notice this vendor that I pull up here, I have set up as inactive, right? And as I mentioned, the question that we get is, hey, I still see it. Why won't it go away? So the solution to that is these grids should have the ability to filter that column. If you see here, I can easily filter that column to say only show me true, which means active vendors. So once I save that, you'll see it disappear, and now I'm only seeing active vendors. If I could also toggle it back, I could also change that to false, and now it only show inactive vendors. So that's a good way where you can filter your list. You still retain all of the history tied to those vendors in this case, but you can easily filter your screen. And that works across the board pretty much with, like sales items, chart of account codes, really anywhere that you're cleaning up your system, toggling different items to be inactive. Okay, so just flipping back to the PowerPoint here, just to expand on column filters a little bit, for those of you that don't know, you can also use advanced column filters in certain grids. So highly used grids such as members, for example. We all know that there's a search bar at the top of the screen where you can type in a member's last name or first name, whatever you want to search on, but there's also these advanced column filters that you can use where you can filter on each column individually. It works a lot like Excel, where you can choose to filter on certain items. You can also put advanced rules on it, say, it must begin with a certain letter, things like that. So I just want to quickly show that one as well. Let's toggle over to members. So this is obviously an accounts receivable under members, where many of you spend a lot of your time. Just to show these column filters, in order to activate them, you do have to toggle this button right here that you see next to the search bar. And what that'll do is put this extra row here in the grid that you can use to filter. So notice how that toggles it on or off. And here's where now I can use my filters. So, this is an example where, maybe I could filter on only active members, just like we were talking about before. So I could filter on the status. Now I could filter on something else, like maybe we look for somebody who lives in a certain state, let's say. Now I could go over to the state column and maybe I filter that to only show people that live in New York, for example. Now that, filters it down to just these two people that I have in my system, or actually one person, sorry, that's active and lives in New York. So you can kind of use your imagination there. You can use lots of different filters. If any of you are familiar with using column filters in Excel, it works very similar to that. Certain ones also have advanced filters as well. If you use this option that says text filters, this is where you can put in your own rules like equals or does not equal or contains. For example, when you click on that, now you could say that their last name must start with the letter A, for example. Now it would filter. Now that I have all those filters, it doesn't find anybody because apparently I don't have any members in my system that live in New York and their last name starts with A. But if I did, that would find it. Okay, so just toggling back to the PowerPoint. The next tip and trick I want to talk about here is our setup validation exports. So this is a very useful tool that you can use to validate how your items in your system is set up. So let's say you've just run a posting report, like the POS end of day, for example, or or you're looking at your GL inquiry, whatever the case may be, and you're wondering, why did something post to a particular GL account? Why am I seeing something in my suspense account, let's say, or why am I seeing something in, this miscellaneous income account that we rarely use? And you're wondering why, how did that get there? So one easy way is you can run these validation exports in the system to basically pull an Excel sheet of all your items in that particular area of the system, and it'll show where they're pointed to, what GL account they're pointed to, how their tax or surcharges are set up. Depending on the option you select, there's various options. So this example you see in the screenshot is on sales items, and it has all kinds of options to include, items about discounts or prep options or menu usage. So depending on which one you're pulling up, there's various options you can choose to export. So you really get that high level glance at all of your items instead of having to toggle through item by item to look for these things. Kind of puts it all in one Excel export for you. So I am just going to toggle over to my system again and show this option to you. So as the screenshot mentions, that's in system administration, and you're going to go into tools. And right here, you can see there's a whole section of setup validation exports where we offer the option to export charge codes, sales items, billing items, payment items, and fee billing. So a lot of the main items that drive revenue and that flow through charge codes in the system. Just to show you one of them, let's go to sales items, for example. So when I double click on that option, here pulls up the screenshot you saw in the PowerPoint. And a lot of key options here you need to make sure to pay attention to. So for one, in this option in particular, you want to make sure to include charge code information. Once you toggle that option, it does offer a couple of additional options. So in this case, you could also choose to only list items with charge code overrides on the category and/or item level, or you can choose to list items with charge code overrides only on the item level. So for those of you familiar with our point of sale system, you can assign charge codes at any of the 3 levels in our hierarchy of the system. You can either assign charge codes at the group, which is the top level, or you can assign charge codes to the category, which is just beneath that, or you can go all the way down to the individual item level and override the charge code there. So if you really wanted to filter this down to say just your overrides of items with charge code overrides on the item level, then you could toggle this option, for example. Just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to export all of them. So I'm going to only include the main charge code information. Also, again, optional features here where you could select certain info like sales area restrictions or minimums or prep printing. All of that's available here. Also in step 2 in this option, you could choose to filter to specific groups or categories. So if you were looking for just, wine, for example, you could filter those lists just to show food and beverage wine, or if you only wanted to see golf services, for example. So you could filter this to show really anything you want available in your POS system. Otherwise, if you leave everything checked, then it'll export everything. So I'm going to go ahead and click export once I have all my parameters set. Then it simply asks where you want to export it to. So now you just have to choose a folder on your computer or your desktop, for example, to export the report to. Give it some sort of title. The default title is just sales item export in this case, but if you were going to do multiple exports, say like one for food and beverage and another for golf, then you might want to give those 2 different titles. In this case, I'll just keep it as the generic title, and I'm going to hit save. After you hit save, in this case, I do already have an export with that same exact name, so it's just warning me here, do I want to replace it? So I'll go ahead and hit yes. Then it's going to export, and most of these exports typically give you this option where you can either click OK. If you click OK, it's just going to save that export on my desktop. Or if I click open, it's actually going to go ahead and launch Excel to the screen right now. Okay, and it actually launched on my other monitor, so I'm going to drag that over. And there you go. So you can see in this case how useful this could be if you were looking for setup information in your system. This shows me all of my sales items. It shows the category that they're linked to. And then the key part here that most people would be looking for is what charge code and general ledger is this going to hit. So if I scroll through here, you'll see various items from pro shop merchandise sales to food and beverage sales. If I keep going down, further down, here's food and beverage, here's banquets. So here's where I could now narrow down, how did something post to a specific GL account, or what may be set up incorrectly in my system. So this is how you could identify those mistakes and possibly, correct them for the future. Okay, and again, that was just the sales item export, but keep in mind there's also options to export the charge codes themselves, or you could export billing items, payment items, or fee billings. All of the programs work pretty much the same way, where you have various options to set, and then you would hit export, choose your file name, and then export the file. So toggling back to our presentation here, next one we want to talk about is AR membership status changes. So this is a really cool tool here where you can automate the changes of certain members. So a lot of clubs will have rules about membership types and when members have to, say, age up to certain categories. So let's say when they hit 30 years old, they need to become a full member, or when they hit 60 years old, they become a senior member or an honorary member. So, rather than having to keep track of all that yourself and, set reminders for yourself and things like that, you can actually set up rules in the system that automate that process for you. So there's various options to it that we'll talk about, and then I'll demo it a little bit for you as well. This screenshot shows some of the options we have available. You can set the rules based on either the age of the member, or you can set it based on the number of years that they've been a member at the club, so their membership years, or you can do a combination of both. You can also set advanced filters. So if you want to put in a custom filter that say something like this in my screenshot where it says board member is not equal to true. So basically they can't be a board member. So maybe there's some exception at the club that we're not going to change the membership type of board member. So we want to exclude them from that rule. You could set advanced filters like that. In this case, in my system, I have an extra info field called board member. So you would have to have the same in your system. But you can really filter on any of your fields that you have in your particular Jonas system. The next thing I want to talk about before I demo this feature is the two options you have when running this tool. You can either set this program to run automatically on its own on a recurring basis. So you could tell it to run every month on the first Monday of the month, for example, or the first day of the month, or you could tell it to run once a year. And the system will just make those changes on its own on that recurrence pattern. Alternatively, you can run it through a little bit more of a manual process where you get the chance to preview the report before it runs, and you kind of get your eyes on it, you can proof it, and then you can approve the changes. So you're really not making the changes manually yourself, you're more just running a report to preview what changes the system's going to make, and then finalizing that yourself to approve it essentially. A lot of clubs opt for that option to run it manually just because there might be certain rules or exceptions. Maybe the board has to vote to approve these changes. So if there's anything like that, you might want to opt for the manual process, because otherwise, if you set it up to run automatically on a recurrence pattern, the system is just going to run it itself, and it's just going to happen, and you really don't even see it yourself. So just want to keep in mind those two options. You could either set up the recurrence pattern where you have a little bit less control over it, or you can go run the task in accounts receivable to run it manually. That way you get a chance to preview the report and finalize the changes. So just want to kind of poke around on that feature a little bit, show you that one. So as the screenshots show, the setup for that particular rule or setup is in accounts receivable. If you go to your setup section, it's going to be under AR settings. When you open up AR settings, it's going to be in the defaults tab. All the way at the bottom is where you've got a button that says membership type and club status changes. Here I have a couple of rules set up. If you did not already have a rule set up in your system, you would simply add a new row to this grid. And the way it works is you tell the system to look for one particular membership type and status combination, and then you tell it what new membership type or new status to change them to. So in my first example, I have that they need to go from a junior golf member who is active, and they're going to change to a single golf member who's also active. So in this case, I'm not changing the status. I'm just changing the membership type, but it's telling it what to look for in the first two boxes. Look for junior golf who's active, and then change them to single golf who's active. Then to set up the actual parameters for the rule, I'm going to click on Edit Rule. And here's where you can set up that criteria of whether you're basing this on age only, membership years only, or both, or you could do either. So in this case, I simply have it based on age, and I'm telling it to look for a range of ages of members from 30 to 35. So this is basically saying that once a member hits 30 years old, if they are still a junior member in the system, we want to flip them to a single golf member because that's the rule at my club. Now, with the maximum age, I have that set to 35 because then we might have an additional rule after that. Say when they hit 35, they might have to go to a different membership type. So you're really setting up the range of ages that is going to be a single golf member in this case. And the system's going to look for those members that are in that age, but still in this membership type that they should not be in. And when it finds those, it'll switch them to the membership type I've defined here. Also, as mentioned previously, you can set up additional filter rules here. This is where you can hit Edit Filters. And this is where you can have a filter such as this that I had in the screenshot, that said board member is not equal to true. So basically, we're saying that we only want to change people that are not a board member in this case. Okay. So just flipping back to my system here for a moment. Here's the rule again. I'm going to save that. And here's the option where you can schedule changes. So this is where the decision has to be made to either let the system run this automatically on a recurrence pattern or run it manually myself. If I toggle this option to run it automatically, then I can set up the recurrence pattern. And here's where you could set up that recurrence to happen either every week or every month or every year. If you do set it up to be automatic, you just want to be aware of your billing cycle. So for example, if you set this to the 30th of the month, every month, then more than likely the changes are going to happen before you run your fee billings for the month. So, which is good if you would want them to change before month end when you run your statements. But if you want them to change after your month end, then you probably want to set it something like the 2nd or 3rd or 4th of the month, sometime after you've run your billings for the month. So just keep that in mind, again, because the system is just going to change it on that day if you set it to be automatic. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to leave it on manual. That way I could show you the next step where you would run the task. So I'm just going to leave that turned off, save and close this, and then save it. That way I can show you the task where you could run it manually and get to preview it. So that task is going to be under accounts receivable, and you go into tasks, and here's your program for membership status changes. Works a lot like the other posting programs you might run, like record charges or cash receipts or whatnot. Your first step is going to be to click new. Then you have to choose the change date. So typically this is going to be the date you're running it, although you could do this as of a previous date or a future date. So if you do have those rules at your club where say the board has to approve the changes, you could go run this ahead of time. So for example, I could run this as of November 30th. That way I could kind of preview the changes that are coming at the end of the month. And that way maybe you could print the report, give it to your board and say, hey, here are the membership changes coming up, and you could get them to sign off on it. After you select your date, next thing you want to do is go to step 2, select change rules to process. And here's where it gives you the options of all your rules that you have set up in the system and which ones you want to run. So maybe you only want to run one of the rules at a time. You could choose to only run that one rule, or you can run all of them at the same time. So for demo purposes here, I'll just leave everything turned on. And then the next step would be to go to step 3, review changes. And here's where it's going to show you which members it finds. So in my particular system, it finds 2 members that needs to change. It found one that needs to change from a single golf to a family golf. And then it found one that needs to change from junior golf to single golf based on those rule parameters that I have set up. If there were any exceptions for any reason, they would show up in this tab. And that's simply showing basically every member that it didn't find for whatever reason, because in this case, maybe they're not in the age range. But these members are the ones it did find. This is where now I could go ahead and preview it, and that's where you could get a report. And again, this is the beauty of doing this manually, is that you do get all this information ahead of time. You don't, you aren't blindsided by any changes where the system just makes it. You may not have wanted to change it. So again, this is where the preview can be beneficial. After previewing, if you did want to make all these changes, you simply go to the last step, update and finalize, and that's where you would hit this button to update and finalize changes. Once you click that button, it's going to take everybody on that report it was set to change and actually just go ahead and change them. So you can use your imagination a little bit. At a larger club with a lot more members, there might be a lot more members here that need to change on an annual basis, for example. So it'll go ahead and make all those changes for you, and you don't have to worry about changing their membership type manually one by one. So pretty useful trick there that a lot of people overlook. Going to go ahead and flip back to the PowerPoint, see what we got next. So next up is an option we have in the member account inquiry. So this is the ability to actually print or email certain documents to members. So let's say a member calls the club and they ask for the copy of one receipt. So they may not want all their receipts or their entire statement. They're simply looking for the copy of a single receipt. So a trick here is you could actually pull up those documents on their account inquiry and choose to email them right from Jonas. And Jonas will go ahead and queue up an email in whatever your default email program is, like say Outlook, for example, and it will toggle, pull up that email ready to go. You could type in a message to the member, but the key is it'll already have the member's email address populated. It'll also already have the document populated as a PDF attachment. So a pretty useful tool there. You can also print documents as well from the same screen, but usually more commonly the email is the option most clubs are using these days. This is found under accounts receivable. It's in the account inquiry program. you simply pull up the member, and you would find this in the Documents tab of the member account inquiry. The trick is to make sure you select in the column selector here on the left which documents you want. It'll default to having all of them selected, but you want to make sure to have the one selected that you want. You can also use some of the common tricks in the system, such as to right click, for example, if you want to select all or unselect all. But once you have the document selected that you want to either print or email, then you hit email selected or print selected. If you hit email selected, you'll see this pop up. Like in my system, I would have this connected to Outlook, and Outlook would pop up with that member's email address, and then I can fire that email off to them. So pretty useful tip there to avoid having to download the document, save the document, pull up the email, go find the document. We can kind of do it all here in pretty much one click. Okay. Another feature here I want to highlight are the BI analysis tools, and also specifically using age groups. So the BI analysis tools, I feel like, is a reporting program that a lot of people overlook because it's kind of embedded, a little bit hidden, if you will, in the business intelligence program. Each module, such as accounts receivable, has their own reports in the system, but BI has these analysis tools that are kind of a little bit buried, and a lot of people overlook them. So I want to highlight that here, where to find this program, because there's some pretty useful reports. And also going to highlight the feature about age groups, because I know that's a big thing in a lot of clubs. They want to report on how many members they have in certain age groups, how many of those are males or females, how long have they been a member at the club. There's a lot of good data on this particular report shown on the screen here, which is the gender demographic report. So I'm just going to highlight that, walk through where you would find this in the system. Where you would find that is in business intelligence, and you're going to go into the report section where you can find the analysis tool. So you can find it on your ribbon bar right here, but it's also under the reports menu. When you launch that program, there's 4 canned reports, each with various options that you can run. So this isn't anything you really have to build yourself. It's all canned right here. We've got a membership change inquiry, which can show changes with members that you can look up. There's a gender demographic report, which is the one I'm going to highlight in a moment. There's also a membership change report, which is just a little bit different than the inquiry. The change report more comes out in like a PDF format, whereas the inquiry, gives you some drill down capabilities and such. And there's also a resigned report you can run to show member resignations. Just to highlight the gender demographic report, I'm going to double click on that option. And the first thing that pops up is which report format do we want. So there's various report formats, such as summary of dependent info. We also have a detailed version. There's a summary with multi-periods, and there's a summary by age group. And the summary by age group is the one I want to highlight here, because it does require a little bit of setup when it comes to defining those age groups that you want. So first I'll show you the report, then I'll kind of back up to show you where you would set up those age groups in your own system. So if I choose that option, next I have options to filter by gender if you happen to want to show either males only, females only, or all. I'll just leave it on all. Then you can also choose as of a certain date if you wanted to. That's the nice thing about these BI analysis tools, where you can backdate to say October 31st and run it as of that date, as opposed to running it as of today. You can also set multiple filters at the top. You can filter by say membership type or status, and you can even set advanced filters as well. You could set up comparison filters to compare either like years or months or quarters, and tell it how far back to go when using those period ranges. And then also you can show the age groups. So this is what I wanted to highlight after we run the report. I have a pretty simple example of age groups here where I have ranges of ages, say from 21 to 29, 30 to 29, 40 to 49. So basically creating buckets of ages of members that the report can break it down into. And these are custom defined for each club, so you could go in and define your own parameters for those. But if I'm ready to run this report, I'm simply going to hit generate. And it gives you a really nice, clean Excel report here on the screen, breaking out lots of bits of information here. So it breaks it down by membership type. And then here's your age ranges within each membership type, showing, say, how many females, males, percentages, average age, average years they've been a client, all kinds of good info. Each one, you notice, is broken down by membership type and status. and then within those breaks it down by those age groups that I mentioned. So really clean, good looking report here. Again, you can run this in lots of different ways. Back at the beginning, if I hit show parameters, you can run this with all kinds of different formats, filters and such, using all these various options. Now the question is how do I set up those age groups? Because that was actually a new feature we released along the way. It hasn't been there forever. So I wanted to make sure everyone knows how to set up those age groups if this is something you're interested in. Where you would set up those age groups to use on a report like this is back in accounts receivable, because that's where this data lives. And you go into your setup section, and here's where you'll find age groupings. So simply double click that program. If you did not already have age groups set up here, you would click new to set up a new age group, give it some sort of title, and then here's where you would set up each range. So as you see in mine, this is where I have those different ranges set up that I want to see for ages. So you could set up multiple logics here. So let's say, one membership director wants to see a certain range of ages. Maybe the GM has a different idea of the ranges of ages they want to see. They could set up their own, different age groupings that you could use on reports. In my system, I just have one kind of default tier set up with all the ranges, but you could kind of do that however you want. And then when you're running the reports, you could select which age grouping set up to use. So hopefully that's a good one everybody can take away and use when running these certain reports in accounts receivable. Okay, just to highlight another report in accounts receivable, this is the sales by member report. So a lot of common requests we get is around member spending. That's a big piece of data that a lot of clubs are looking into is, what members are using the club, what members are not using the club. So there's a canned report in the system called sales by member. It's available both in accounts receivable and in point of sale. So depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for information about sales in the dining room and the golf shop, you might want to run the one in point of sale. But if you're also looking for information about, say, like dues billings or minimum spending or admin charges, then you might want to run the one in accounts receivable. The version in accounts receivable will also include point of sale as well. So if you're looking for a complete picture, then AR is probably the one to go. When you go down to point of sale, that's the one that's only going to show point of sale and does not include items from accounts receivable. The particular format I want to highlight with this one is this format that you can use called one column per group. So that's critical here because it makes it in a really good format. A lot of clubs run the original format that's broken down by member, so it sort of shows the member and then it's indented where separate rows show up for the charges. And a lot of clubs don't like that because it doesn't export really well into Excel. This version called one column per group works a lot better for an Excel export because you can see each member has one row with all their different categories or groups of charges, and then the groups or categories go left to right. So you can really follow the report pretty easily. And then if you export to Excel, you really just get that one clean row per member. So that's one critical option here if you like that format, is to run one column per group or one column per category, depending on which level of detail you want. Another useful option is you can sort it by the value sold, highest to lowest. So if you're looking for those high, top spenders at your club, then you might want to run it as highest to lowest, sorted by the value. Another new option we released a couple of years ago was to also include zero spenders. So originally with this report, if nobody bought anything at the club over the period of time, or they weren't charged for anything, then they just would not show on the report at all. But some clubs came to us and said, hey, how do I find out which members are not using the club so we can target them to start using the club more? We released this option to include zero spenders as well, so you could identify those members on the report that actually had no activity at all. So I'm just going to flip over to my system and show you how you would pull up that report really quickly. That report is under accounts receivable. You just go into the report section and it's under sales by member. So here is where you could choose that format, either one column per group, or if you had it grouped by category, you could also choose one column per category. So just depending which you have selected here would determine which one you select in the second option. Here's where you would choose to sort by highest to lowest and also the zero spenders. So once you generate the report, you would see that populate on the screen and show your top spenders, kind of high to low, and also show those zero spenders as well. Kind of elaborating a little bit more on reports in general, a tip here we want to highlight is how you can actually save reports and publish reports. And then in a moment, I'm also going to get into that report scheduler that Steve mentioned a little bit earlier. So the key here is that if you have a report you're running all the time with certain parameters, you might want to save it for future use. That way you don't have to set all of those parameters every time you run the report, because there's a lot of checkboxes, a lot of drop-down boxes and such. If you really have that report nailed down to the way you like it, go ahead and save it, and then you could actually publish it either to yourself or other users so they could find it in My Reports. So they could simply click My Reports. It pulls up all the reports that have been published to them. And then you can easily kind of go down your list of favorite reports, and you don't have to kind of navigate through all the different parts of the system to find those various reports that you run all the time. So just to demo that one, we'll stay on the example of sales by member. The way you would do that is to click this button that says Save Format, and then you can choose to give it a report title. So in my system, I've already saved this as member spending, so I'll just leave it on that title. But then you can also set what date parameter to load when you run the report. So in this case, I've told it to run year to date every time I've run it. But you could also choose different options, like to run it as of yesterday or as of the previous week or current month. So if you're using that report scheduler that we'll talk about in a few minutes, this is critical because this is the date format that it's going to print every time that report pumps out of the email scheduler. So after saving this, you can also publish it, like I mentioned. This is where if you wanted to make it show up in My Reports, so simply saving it just saves it in this drop-down box. But if you take it a step further, you can publish it, give it some sort of title if you wanted to create different groupings. So these will be like folders of reports. Let's say you have food and beverage reports and then membership reports. You could create different groups to store these reports in your section of My Reports to help organize those. Once you hit publish, now we need to choose which users to publish those to. So in my system, I've actually already published it to these two users, regular user and then myself, Corey Reed here. But if I wanted to publish it to somebody else, I would simply check the box to say publish next to their name, and that would send it over to their name. When they run My Reports, it would show up for them. So if you did want to publish it for anybody else at the club, you could do that here. Then you simply hit publish. Once you've done that, that's where they could find it under My Reports throughout the system. So notice each module has that button. If I'm in point of sale, I can see My Reports. If I'm in accounts receivable, I can also see My Reports. Pretty much shows up in every module. So when I go to My Reports, here's where it shows all the reports I have saved. So this is the new one I just added with member spending. And you can see here how it can build a list of reports, and I just go right down the list. And I don't have to kind of click around all throughout the system to find them. I can just click on the report, hit launch report, and then it'll pull up that same exact report you saw, but notice how it preloaded everything for me. It preloaded the dates, starting with January 1st, because I had it set for year to date. It also preloaded my format to do one column per group, to do values sold. So all those options I had preloaded automatically populate here, and I don't have to click them every time. Also, if you had any advanced options selected up here, such as certain sales areas or categories, it would preload those as well. So time saver here, if this is a report you're going to run every week or every month, for example, really all you have to do is launch the report, hit generate, it'll launch that report right here for me. All right, so just to expand a little bit on more reports here, Steve mentioned earlier a feature with General Ledger where we now allow you to use a report scheduler where you could automatically email reports at a certain time on a recurrence pattern. We've gradually added this to most of our programs. Now we have it with point of sale and accounts receivable, now General Ledger. So I really wanted to highlight this feature, show how it works. We'll stick with that same report that I've designed, the member sales report. Let's just toggle over to Encore. This case, if I wanted to go to accounts receivable, I'm going to go into reports, and here's where you could find the report scheduler. So you should be able to see this same option also in point of sale and also in General Ledger, as Steve mentioned, once that feature is released. But I pull up the report scheduler. Here's where I can set different parameters. So which report am I going to save it for or to run it for? Which date setting am I going to display it for? And then you could set up the recurrence pattern for how often this report will run. You know, I could set it to run monthly, the first Monday of every month, or daily at 3 a.m. The system does default to generating these at 3 a.m. for each day. You cannot customize that option. We just chose that option because, you know, that's typically when days roll over at the club. Usually there's little to no activity at that time of day. So that's the time it will generate every day. But the recurrence pattern that it actually goes out is defined by you as to how often you want that report generated. Other options here, you can choose which emails they go to. So this does rely on users having email addresses connected to their user account. So these are 2 users that I wanted to send this report to. They have their email addresses connected to their user account. I could show you that in a minute just to make sure everybody knows where that is. Optionally, you can also set up distribution lists. So if you just wanted to automatically send this out to all your F&B managers, you could have a distribution list set up that already has those emails linked to it. So to save you time there, so you don't have to put in each user. Also here under email setting is where you could choose which email it comes from. So who is sending the email as far as the from email address and the sender's name here. Now, just to cover how those email addresses are connected to the users so that everybody knows that, first I'm going to go into System Administration and go to Users. And then under Users, if we just pull up a user like myself, there's just a box here that has the option to put in an email address. So that has to be filled in for this user in order for them to receive that email. So that's the first step, is on their user account, they do need an email link to it. The second step is if you wanted to set up those distribution lists that I mentioned. So if we go into System Admin and go to System Setups, here's where you can find distribution lists. And here's where I have those different distribution lists, such as my F&B managers, or my Gen Handicap list, or my membership list. If you did not have any distribution lists set up already, you would simply click New, give it a new title, and then here's where you would list the usernames and email addresses that should be kind of packaged into this distribution list. And that way, when I'm going to use a feature like the report scheduler, I could simply select that distribution list to send the email to instead. So just flipping back to the slides, I think that pretty much wraps up our tips and tricks. I'm going to pass it back to Steve here. We'll keep the screen share on mine, but Steve's going to talk about a new program or tool we're using called UserVoice, and we'll kind of wrap up with that with some Q&A.
Thanks, Corey. Yeah, we wanted to make sure everyone was aware of UserVoice, which is our kind of site that we use to track client feedback and comments on items that our client base would like to have implemented within the Encore system and various Jonas products, even Clubhouse Online and the different apps that we have as well. So UserVoice is something that we rolled out last winter. It was a slow rollout, but it's now available to all of our clients and all of our applications. The actual site itself can be accessed through support.jonasclub.com. So to get to UserVoice, you'd want to actually just log into our main support community site that we have, which is also fairly new, that we rolled out last year. So you want to log into support. On that homepage, there's a button for UserVoice. And the idea here is to search for ideas that we already have logged. So if our client base is using the application, then we can track and receive requests and see posts from ideas from our entire client base, and others can see that as well. And you can then vote on those ideas. So not only are we tracking like how many different ideas come of similar kind of module like accounts receivable or point of sale, but we can also vote on those ideas, and you can vote, you can comment, you can add your 2 cents on how you want an idea implemented or thoughts on somebody else's idea. So that's kind of our idea with UserVoice, is to maybe have more of a community forum on some of the items that we're releasing or that we want to release. With that, we also have statuses. So ideas, when they kind of are taken from just a discussion on UserVoice to actually something that we are investigating, to implementation, to completion, like this merge duplicate vendors, you would actually get an update for that. So the people who have voted on the idea would receive status updates on how that idea is kind of shaping within our development. So I strongly recommend, if you haven't logged into UserVoice yet, to go to the support site, click on the homepage tab. Corey, if you want to flip slides here, just quick. Here we go. So here's a screenshot of our support site, and the UserVoice is one of the options there on the homepage. If you click it, it'll take you to the UserVoice site, and from there you can look at the other ideas that have been logged for Encore or Clubhouse Line or Mobile POS, and then you can start voting on those ideas as well. So you can add new ideas, you can vote. If you want to insert a new idea, this system will also tell you if it's been posted already. So it will also track those duplicates. So you can just vote on an idea that's already been posted. So this is something that we want to use going forward to kind of shape some of our development. I know we've received requests the last few years through our support team, through professional services, and we're taking everyone's kind of feedback into consideration on how we shape this application going forward. But definitely UserVoice is something that we want our clients to utilize to have more of that community type of forum and the ability to vote on the ideas of others to help shape our Encore product.
Okay, great stuff there. So hopefully everybody will check that out on our support site. Start using UserVoice to give us some great ideas. It also gives you a chance to little visibility into what other clients are requesting as well. I think with that, we're going to wrap up with some Q&A. So we've got a couple of questions in the chat here. First one that came in, I think we're just waiting on a little bit more clarification, but we might reach out directly to see there. We did just get a new one, Steve, that just came in. The question is, will there be a budget export enhancement in the future? So I guess, are there any enhancements on the radar for budget exports currently? Not in the next 3 months. We're not looking for any type of enhancements to budget exports. I think we can review exactly what Tracy might be looking for with budget exports, and then maybe see what our options are in the future. But nothing specific to for budgets in the next 2 to 3 months within the Encore system. Okay. So feel free, anybody, to throw any questions you have in the chat. We'll give you just a couple of minutes to throw your questions in there before we wrap up. Just give them 1 or 2 minutes to throw some questions in there. Hopefully there was some helpful information here for you guys. If you don't have any questions, you can feel free to drop off. I do see one question that came in, said it won't let me copy and paste. Financial report setup, no actual by month for a few months in a row.
I think what Kathy's looking for is maybe just not a financial statement for a specific month, but for a stretch of months. And Kathy, I think that's something that you and I can discuss further. I will connect with you this week.
She asked if she could be unmuted, but I'm not sure, Relita, do we have that option in this webinar? I don't think we can choose just one user to unmute, can we?
Okay, I think I just
Hi.
unmuted her. Yeah.
You hear me?
Oh, there we go. Okay. Hey, Kathy.
Hi. So yeah, so the choices to run the financial statements are actual month to date last year, quarter to date last year, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking for something that says, you know, all the months. I want to see one report that has the totals for January, totals for February, all separate. You get where I'm going? So we can do month-to-month comparisons. Everything you have here is really year-to-date or month-to-month this year to last year.
Yep.
Actually, month in the current year.
Actually, Steve, I might, if I understand that correctly, I might be able to show a little trick on that. So Kathy, I'm going to pull up my report designer if you could still see my screen.
Yeah.
The key would be in your report designer. So financial report designer. I'm just going to pull up one of my random reports. Actually, I have one here that's a 12-month income statement. I think that's what you're looking for.
That is correct.
The trick is you would add each of the columns. So if you look at where I have January, for example. All right, you already see where I'm going. So,
right.
Yes,
Okay.
so you're still adding either like actual year to date, for example, or actual month to date. But there's a little feature over here where you can say the number of months back it goes. So,
Gotcha.
So the trick is you're always going to run this report as of December 31st. So it's like you're always running it or whatever the end of your fiscal year is. So if my fiscal year is December, this one's the actual one that's just year to date, right? So that's 0 months back. But then this column is 1 month back, this column is 2 months back, and so on and so on. So that's the trick, is just kind of repeating the same column, but then utilizing this months back feature.
Gotcha. All right, that works.
Yeah, then when you're running it, the key is just make sure you're always running it as of December 31st. That way it's accurately working with like that 1 month back, 2 month back, and so on. If you run it as of, say, November, then it's kind of going to be all off. So.
Well, see, but that's not, well, you have to run it as of December, but it's only going to show your entries through. If you're in July, it's only showing through June, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like
Correct.
August and September would just be $0 at that point.
Right. Okay.
Yep. So that's definitely possible. Just a little trick you have to use with manipulating the columns and the number of months back it's going to show. So look.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
Awesome. Great.
And with the addition to financials and the report scheduler, we actually have an option to run it as of the end of your fiscal period. So this would be a great example, or if you have a report design that gives you a kind of a 12-month view and you have to run it at the end of your fiscal period, there's an option, report scheduler, to always run your financial as of the end of your fiscal period, whatever month that might be.
Okay. And you know what? I unfortunately missed the website. What is it? Support.jonas.com.
It's actually support.jonas. Hold on 1 second. I could actually just pull it up here. So
Support site is support.jonasclub.com.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's support.jonasclub.com. I could even just pull it up here. Put in my password real quick. Oh, sorry. This is our multi-factor authentication here in work. So.
Is that your office in the background or just some office somewhere?
That is actually our office in Markham, Ontario, right there in the background.
So are you like, what, third floor, fourth desk from the left?
Something like that. It looked like it was pretty early in the morning, so I think Steve was in that day. But I
you guys
wasn't
waving. Hi, wave to everybody.
But here's our support site where you could see, you know, here's where you could go to UserVoice right here and take that program Steve was mentioning. We did have another question pop in from Tracy. Tracy says in BI dashboards reports, when I click on the report, I receive the message data warehouse has not been created yet. How do I create a data warehouse? So Tracy, that's a common thing if you've never used that program before, especially if perhaps you might have had your system installed before that option was available. There's just a utility our support team has to run in order to fix that for you. So I would say it's your earliest chance. Just give our support team a call and log that issue. One of our support techs can dial in and help you fix that issue. They might possibly need access to your server. So If you want to have, your IT handy, or maybe even have your IT reach out, whoever has access to the server, our support can help you with that pretty easily. Just going to give them another moment for any other questions to pour in. Maybe give them one more minute and then we'll wrap up.
I do see a few questions there, Corey. One's from Angie in regards to the distribution list. Not able to find it under system setup.
If you cannot see it under system setup, so if you've checked this exact path, system admin, system setups, if you do not see distribution list here, more than likely it's an issue with your menu security. So if there's an administrator at your club that kind of controls who has access to what, you would want to contact them first, and they can help you to add that to your menu. If that person happens to be you, if you're controlling that, then it might have been something you inherited, that access. In that case, you would want to contact our support team. They can dial in and help you get access to that program. So they simply need to check your user account. If you go into users, either on the user group that you're in or the user account itself, if you have an override for your menu security, you would go there. Otherwise, it could possibly be on the user group that you're connected to. You would go to menu security, and this is the screen you could see that determines what you have access to. So you would just want to find system admin, system setups. Here's where you could find distribution list. And odds are right now that's turned off, where it has, your user account has no access to it. So you would want to just make sure that's toggled on to full access. I think we did have another question, Steve, that I overlooked. Looks like, is there an order that the reverse sign is applied to the reports? I've worked for hours and the report calculates correctly, but the amount are printed with the reverse sign. So typically, Robin, with that, most standard income statements, you would want both incomes reversed on the P&L, but you would not reverse expenses. That's at least the way most accountants want to show them. When it comes to the balance sheet, typically you want to show assets as their true sign. But then liabilities and equity would be reversed. So that's kind of the rule I always start with when checking these reports. Is all the groupings within revenue, are they all reversed? The groupings within expenses, are they not reversed? That's usually where I would start with that. If that's something you feel like you have right, but something's still not working out, just reach out to us and we can take a look with our support team there.
Hi, we have another question here. Tina Johnson says she asked a question and you missed it or something.
Yeah, is that the one I was getting ready to read, the one when entering invoices, it looks like. Sorry, they came in when I was demoing the UserVoice thing and I passed by them. It looks like we've got the question is when entering invoices, a question pops up asking if you want to clear the account distribution. Is there a way to remove this question every time? I might have to try to emulate this one. Is that an accounts payable invoices, it seems?
Yes, you have to unmute her, Tina Johnson. She's still muted.
Okay, I think Rolita, could you unmute Tina possibly?
Okay, she's unmuted.
Yes, that's an accounts payable.
Okay. And at which point is it when you get that question? I'm just going to try to emulate that. So you've put in a vendor.
Yes, after you go through the whole process of one vendor, if you change vendors, it pops up after you select a new vendor.
Okay, so here you're saying you've already got this info entered. Now, let me choose options here. So you're saying if you pull up that same invoice and now change the vendor, say this vendor. that question there. Do you want to clear
Yes.
the account distribution?
That's it.
I
Mhm.
don't think we can change that. Steve, just correct me if I'm wrong. I think the idea is that this vendor might have different default general ledger accounts linked to them. So if you had, say, if you had Cisco pulled up, they might default to food. But then if I put in Callaway Golf, they might default to golf merchandise. So it's basically asking if you want to clear this account distribution and start over, or do you want to keep the accounts you've already put on this vendor? So we're just offering that possibility of changing the general ledger codes on this vendor because the vendor changed.
Right, but when you set up a vendor, you can put whatever account code you want by vendor. So why would it ask you this every time? It's like another step.
Yeah, let's say you don't have that set up. So a lot of clubs may not have every single vendor assigned to a default GL code. So it's just basically confirming, did I put the right GL code based on the vendor? Because a lot of users will base their GL code off of the vendor you put in. So if I had Cisco at the top, my brain might be automatically triggered to put in food cost at the bottom, right? But now if I go to the top and change it to a totally different vendor, it's kind of just making me confirm that I have the right GL accounts listed there at the bottom.
Okay.
With that, I want to circle back to Robin's question about the financial reports with a reverse sign. I see she added another comment there. Robin said, I meant between the line designer format and report designer. So great question, Robin. So typically we recommend only reversing the sign in the line designer and never reversing the sign in the report designer. The reason is because you could end up with some weird, say, double negative situations. Because if you reverse the line and then you also reverse the column's just going to kind of cancel out what you did in the line, and then you end up back right back where you started because you've got a double negative effect there. Also, when it comes to other columns in the report that you may not want everything reversed. Like I mentioned earlier, you only want revenues reversed, liabilities, and equity. So if you reverse the column in the report designer, then it would also reverse everything like expenses, assets, and so on. So it's usually best to only reverse items where you want in the line designer, but never, always use the true sign in the report designer. I hope that makes sense. Okay, any other questions that I'm missing?
One other quick question. Sorry, this is Kathy again from Lake Mohawk Country Club. I don't have the option to unpost or to see my previous posted AP invoices. Can you tell me what update that was in? Maybe we're on in the latest update?
Oh, you have to have permissions as well. So your user account would need to first have permissions to unpost batches. Okay. So that's the first step. Get your system administrator, unless you are the system administrator,
I'm not, and I do not have permissions to unpost tasks. So once that's changed, then you're saying I should be able to see past batches, and I can choose to post or unpost them.
Correct. Yeah, we've been introducing unpost option. The first one for journal entries was last year, and then in the summertime we did invoices, and just as of late we did auto apply credits. So if you're not seeing any of your previous postings in those areas, it's most likely due to the security setting on your user account.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, and I've pulled up that setting here on the screen so you can see it, Kathy. Again, you could check it under user groups or users. It's under restrictions, and you get a miscellaneous, and here's the option
I do. I see exactly where it is, and I know because I can see it. I said that I'm not sure. I can't unpost tasks, so therefore it's not showing up. So I will talk to my administrator about it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I don't see any other questions, and we've pretty much hit time. So, feel free to reach out to us, guys, through our support channels if there were anything, we couldn't get to today. Hope this was some useful information for you guys, and look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.
Thank you.
All right,
thanks everyone.